Do you run an e-commerce business? Well, get ready for the CHYE E-commerce Business Summit coming up February 6, 2018. It'll be an unforgettable evening filled with education, resources, and inspiration to rocket charge your sales. Plus, a lavish buffet dinner. To find out more, log on to chye.info.
Welcome to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K-Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy, director of CHYE. Each week, we bring you interviews with amazing Jewish entrepreneurs sharing their challenges and successes. Their stories will inspire you to make the Keli to take your business aspirations to the next level. Everybody, welcome back to another edition of the K-Factor podcast. This week, I'm very honored to be sitting in the global offices of C&A Marketing together with the CEO, vice president of the company, Chaim Piekarski, known the world over for creating a tremendous global business. And this week, we're going to do something different than the traditional K-Factor. Normally, we like to go through a person's journey and their story. With Chaim, we're going to do a guided discussion. We're going to talk about common pitfalls that a new startup, people starting businesses go through and solutions to, how to overcome them. So I'll start with the opening question. You have a lot of people that have ideas. Let's start even with idea stage. Someone has an idea, and they think it's a good idea to start out with, to start a business. What's the best steps to? How do you test an idea before you go all in with it? What would you say is the smart way to test your idea, validate it?
Well, thank you for having me here. Usually an idea that hasn't been tested, that's where it belongs. It belongs to remain an idea. Startups usually are not just ideas. Usually startups are where someone has actually found a solution to something or found some kind of niche or found a way to figure out in some area how to do some business. And so it may be an idea, but it's an idea that's actually been tested in some way, as opposed to just a concept. What if I were, to build another bridge very cheap and then, put up tolls and make a lot of money on it? So we have to differentiate between ideas and a startup that's actually, started doing something on a small scale.
Right. So, but the question is that someone has this idea and they want to take it to that first step, but before they do the investment, like what would be a good way to test? How do they validate? Look, coming from the CHYA perspective, I've seen a lot of people that think they have a great idea and they throw time and money and effort into it, and it just lahavo v'larik. It ends up becoming a complete disaster and a complete waste of their time. And had they done things a little differently to begin with, they might have saved themselves the headache and the loss of money involved with it.
So again, I want to separate the two. Just take an example of someone's in the catering business. Someone just has an idea. They want to get into the food business. Where do you start? If you're still thinking about it, you probably shouldn't be in that business because you're just one of those people that loves to think. Someone who gets into the food business, let's say by doing a small affair for a family and gets paid for it, or does a bris or a small event and says, "Oh, I think I know something about catering. I know how to go about preparing food, actually buying the food, and laying it out, dealing with the customer, even it's on the smallest of smallest scales." That's a big difference, a huge departure from just a general idea, I want to be in the catering business. At that point, that doesn't mean there is a business, but that's called an idea. Mm-hmm. Hey, I could be good at this. Now, can I actually take this and can I commercialize this? Can I actually turn this into a business? Do I have the skill to be able to scale this up? Can I do all the things that are required to run a successful catering business? So when we talk about an idea, we talk about it has to be at least tested with the person that's in it on some level and some scale.
Right. So in other words, the number one thing that a person should have is the yichayles within that idea. Is that how you're framing it?
Exactly, because a lot of people come to me, or always I hear people talking about ideas. What if we invented this? Or what if we did this? Or what if we did that? So then you're a think tank. You're not in business. The first stepping stone of being in business is actually just doing something, doing more, thinking less. Many a successful business has been started not by someone dreaming up some brilliant idea, but someone actually doing something. And many times what they started doing or what they end up doing could be completely different. And you ended up with this great idea, not because you're sitting around the room and with a bunch of professors and thinkers and dreaming up ideas. You actually tried something, and then that exactly what you tried didn't actually work out, but it evolved into something slightly different that can become very successful.
Got it. So let me, taking the similar question, but from a different angle, just making it practical from a CHYE perspective. In the past few years, there's been a few people that have come to us that wanted to start retail endeavors in Crown Heights, okay? Without going into details of... One of them both of them had these ideas about, these were untapped things that they felt Crown Heights didn't have. There's no representation. I'll give an example from one particular person. He wanted to open a men's shoe store, which there really isn't in Crown Heights at the moment, a good men's shoe store. And we watched him go through the journey. Should he do it? Should he not do it? But he's sitting there and if he has the capital to start the idea, but he wasn't sure if it was worth all the time and effort to actually go ahead and open it. What would you say to such a person? What would he have to do? How would he, he got stuck. He didn't want to take all the risk of opening that store for it to fail. He didn't know how to test it out to even, get the ball rolling, so to say. What would they do in that type of situation?
Someone like that has a very big dilemma in front of them. On the one hand, this could be an untapped opportunity why there is no shoe store, and with a nice big growing community, they could be servicing an untapped market. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there may be a good reason why there is no shoe store. Could be that people's buying habits have changed. People have traditionally shopped elsewhere in other neighborhoods or online, wherever it is, and there will never be a successful shoe store in this community because of all those reasons, no matter what you do. And so this is not about I've tried something and how do I scale it up. This is a bigger question. Do I do this or not? Many times when a lot of people are not doing something is a very good reason for it. On the other hand, if a lot of people are not doing something, that's a huge opportunity for someone to jump in and not continue thinking, well, if nobody's doing it, then it must be a bad idea. It's a very difficult decision. I would approach this a little bit differently. I'd probably open up a shoe store in my basement where the rent would be, much less, no long-term leases, minimal amount to fix it up, maybe discount the shoes a little bit more so incentivize people to shop in a basement versus a retail environment. And at that point, that person can actually determine if there is a real demand, if it's like, wow, now I don't have to shop in another neighborhood, or, you're bringing shoes. It's a good example you brought because shoes is a very finicky thing. It's style, but it's also, there's a basic need, whether it's children needing the right pair of shoes because it's their first pair of shoes, and people want it. Well, people literally, and in Borough Park especially, you see it, people will stand online in specific stores that are known to fit children, and they will wait online in that store to talk to a specific person in the store who is the maven, who is the specialist on fitting young children. And so it's not just about, will I have a better price for shoes, is will I be able to fit that need and actually make a parent feel that child will be on the right footing, so to speak, in that right pair of shoes. On the other hand, there's also style. The teenagers and the boys and the young men or the girls, they want to have something that's, a little trendy, slightly more trendy than everybody else, but then again, like everybody else. And so are you able to fit that need? Do you have a taste? Do you know how to go shopping for shoes? So you have to be able to test that in an in-home environment. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where there are people who care less about style, but They need shoes that actually won't hurt them when they, such as SAS, for example. Those are about comfort and, especially as people get older, they care less about how their shoes look and they care more about, can I walk in these shoes and feel comfortable? So can you actually do all these things in a business, in a retail store? Those are secondary to whether this community actually needs and will actually respond. Because even if it does need a shoe store, will you be able to fit the need of the kind of shoe store that this community needs? The best approach would be start it on a small scale in a lower risk environment, and then if it doesn't work out, you haven't bet the farm. And if you do see a certain response, then you say, wait, now I'm onto something. And you can also fix some of the mistakes that you've made on a smaller scale, rather than if you've opened up a big place, maybe it's in the wrong location, it's on the wrong street. You'll be able to measure that. That would be my advice to someone like that.
Okay, just slightly off track, but just for a second here, because you're the king in the online world. What's your perspective on the future of retail? In general, like if someone's thinking of opening a retail store, maybe online is going to eclipse it. There's no point. Just like a quick perspective from your vantage point in the online world. Where's retail going?
I'm not a big maven, and I just try to understand what's around me, but. I mean, the biggest online business right now spent $13 million buying Whole Foods. And so obviously the biggest online retailer has determined that there is some need for retail. Not the way we know it. That's never going to go back to what it was. But you see that shopping malls are being repurposed, whether it's food establishments or there is a need for retail, just not in the way that we know it. If you need to just buy something and it's all about price or just choice, then you're going to be buying it online. But there is a need for retail, just a different type of need for retail.
So people have to be prepared that the role of retail is evolving from the traditional way it used to be.
Not even a question. Just take an example. For a pharmacy or a drugstore. You can buy many of the things you can buy in a pharmacy, you can buy online and get them delivered next day or even same day if you're in a prime shipping area. On the other hand, there's something about what the pharmacy does that's besides drugs will eventually be able to be filled online if they're not being filled right now. But on the other hand, there's something about what a pharmacy does that sort of almost fills in for, with medical advice or just assurances and guidance or watches out for the person. There's something that pharmacy will always do that a online store will never do, but that drugstore will never look the same. It's competing in a different environment. So there will be retail. And there's going to be a huge need for retail, just a different type of retail.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So coming back to our startup here now. So they passed the idea, they decided to go in, they get their business going over here. What would you say, priorities for somebody who's in a new business? What are the priorities that they have to have?
Well, the list is very, very long, and no one actually sits there with a list and says, well, now I'm a business, let me check my list over here, make sure I do all these things. They end up doing them as the need arises. But some of the things that a small business should be doing, maybe thinking about in advance, are some of the boring things that actually make a business run and make it run extremely well. Most people that go into business don't necessarily have the skill or at least the interest, the aptitude to do the boring stuff, but it's the boring stuff that is just important as the non-boring stuff. So buying and selling, some people get a thrill out of that. They enjoy it, or they enjoy the product, they enjoy the service. But organizing yourself in a way where you actually keep every transaction, in a bookkeeping program, such as QuickBooks, which, you can buy for $100 or less, or a web-based subscription. Being organized and making sure that you actually record each transaction as it happens, not at the end of the week you have a stack of papers and notes that you're going to plug in. And you actually keep yourself organized, and you make sure that you have enough cash in the bank and you're spending it right, and you actually understand how much money you need to make in order to break even, and knowing what your real expenses
I want to just pause you for 1 second. Hold your thought.
Yeah.
I just want to, because you brought it up, one of the most enlightening things that anyone has ever shown me was how to create a break-even analysis for a business. And a lot of people don't ever make that, but they don't know what their break-even is. And I'm just emphasizing the point that you're making over here about keeping records and knowing what you need. This is when someone starts up their business, if they have that break-even analysis prepared, they know that if they want to break even, they have to make X amount of sales. They have to do X amount of customers. It just changes the way they think. We're going to take a quick break to talk about our major upcoming e-commerce event on February 6, 2018. This event is going to be the biggest event ever in CHYE history. It's going to be a 6-hour event with 3 distinct parts. 4 to 6 is going to be seminars. We have 4 tracks, a e-tail track, Amazon Beginners track, an Amazon Advanced track, and a business development track. Afterwards, from 6 to 8, we're going to have a trade show with full buffet dinner. We're going to have over 45 different vendors servicing the e-commerce industry. They're going to be there. It's a tremendous networking opportunity. Together with afterwards at 8 o'clock, we're going to have a CEO panel. We have 6 major players in the industry. They're going to be sharing their wisdom. After the CEO panel, we're going to have our classic breakaway roundtables covering the topics that are the hot topics in the industry. It's going to be a tremendous event, tremendous value, and we look forward to seeing you there. To find out more, log on to chye.info.
It's not only is it important, without that you have no business. And usually that's one of the main reasons a small business fails, is it's just not able to manage their P&Ls, their profit and loss statements, or manage their cash, or to understand what they have to do in order to actually be a healthy business. So they may be buying and selling, but may not be making enough money to be able to cover their expenses, and then not have enough cash and not know how much cash they need. So before you go into it, you have to know, what is this going to cost me? And even if you're wrong, but you adjust that, and then you make business decisions based on that. Maybe I have to borrow more, maybe I have to take in a partner, or maybe I have to cut some expenses and do this myself instead of hire help until I can actually get there. But yes, you are 100% correct. That's one of the biggest pitfalls of a small business, is doing what they love doing and staying away from the boring stuff, which is just as crucial. So if you love driving, but you hate filling up your gas tank, you're not going too far. So it's the same exact thing. So being able to manage little things that really are the sort of the underpinnings of a business, is one of them is managing your cash flow and managing your bookkeeping. And there, it's very easy to do, but you have to be committed to doing it and say, I will not do this business unless I do it. Now, sometimes a person just has absolutely no aptitude, no capability of doing it. That itself, recognizing that, and then maybe either hiring somebody or taking in a partner that's more operational oriented, or sometimes it's a spouse that can, at least in the initial steps of the business, help with the boring stuff. But you have to be open to listening to that other person, because when that person is going to tell you break even is here and not here, and if you do this but don't watch out for your cash flow needs, you're not going to have a business. You have to actually listen and say, you're boring. You don't know what you're talking about. I know better. So you have to be committed to that. That's just one of many things. You also have to think, one of the big priorities is that, how am I actually going to run this business if I want to achieve, let's say, this type of sales? That means, where am I going to get the product from? Do I really know where to get it from? Do I have the ability? Do I know how to get it? Do I know where to get it? Can I actually get it? Do I actually have a way of delivering this product or service to customers myself, or do I need to hire somebody? If I need to hire somebody, can I afford to? Do I have that in my budget? You can't just say, oh, I have a great idea. Go back to the shoe store example. If you need to sell a certain amount of shoes in order to break even, how many pairs of shoes can I sell in an hour in order to reach that sales goal? Can I do it myself, or do I actually need to get help? And can I afford the help? If not, will it be a spouse? Will it be a family member who will do it for free initially, or a partner who will do it for free? But just to say, oh, I'm going to open a shoe store and this is going to be great. Can you actually open a shoe store operating it yourself and actually achieve that first break-even point? Or do you need to hire help? You need to be realistic about what it takes. It's not only bookkeeping, it's also about, do I have the space to do it? Do I have where to get the products? Do I know where I'm going to, how am I going to get this product to my, or service to my consumer? Do I have enough space physically to do it? If it's out of your basement, do you have enough space in your basement? Think about things like storage. If you're buying shoes and you have to buy them by the container load in order to buy them right, do I have a place to store them? Do I have a friend who's going to give me some free space in their warehouse? Or can I afford for public storage? You have to think about these things. Otherwise, you end up thinking about them at the wrong times. And instead of servicing your customers and being in business, now you're busy with the things that you hate doing the most. Now you're forced to do them, and you need to do them at a time when you really don't have time to do them.
Comprende. Let me ask you like this. Vision. You hear this a lot of times, that before you start something, you have to have your 5-year plan, and, you have to, meticulously draw out how you want things to go. Where do you think that fits in? Is that legitimate? Is that something that every new business, before you start a business, you sit down and draw up a 5-year plan, or run with your gut?
If you're a small business and this is one of your first small businesses, I think that's a waste of time. If you're a big business and you want to open up another department or another area that you want to go into, you put together a 5-year plan, because why are you doing this? If you have the resources to do something new, do something that actually will get you somewhere, and the resources that you're going to invest or risk, or the cost opportunity of doing that versus something else, yes, you have to have a 5-year plan. Where do you want to go? Is it worth it? And then how are you going to get there? But if you're a small business, you really don't know where you're going to be in 5 years. But you do have to know that you have the potential of going somewhere big, or much bigger than where you are now. If it's very small and all you want to do is something very small, then know that you're going to do something very small. If you think it's going to be something big, know that this business can actually be big and actually service or, be whatever it is. I think that you need a 1-year plan, a 6-month plan, a 2-year plan, just to be able to put together from a cash flow perspective and from a resources perspective. I think the 5-year, it's overrated.
Okay. Let me ask you like this. So the business is open, it's running, the store is open, customers, it's time to attract customers. Marketing dollars. What would you say in today's day and age? What are good marketing strategies that you'd want to share with people to think about?
Marketing is a funny word. It's a word that doesn't mean a lot to many people. It's like saying Bitcoin, and people don't understand really what it is. It may be great. Marketing is something that needs to be done. You need to tell people about your product or service. It's awareness. There's 2 ways, to attract customers. One of them is just come up with the cheapest price in the world, and even there you need marketing to tell people that you have the cheapest price in the world. The other one is awareness. Why should someone buy your product? That's positioning. More about awareness is not why they should buy the product, but just to have to reach those potential customers. When you start a business, a small business, your first customers are probably the easiest customers to get. So if you're opening up a local store, for example, go back to your shoe store example, it's going to be in your local community. So you're going to call up all your family, your friends. You're going to put up a note, in the local shul and in the school, and maybe give out free flyers, some posters. That's how you're going to tell people, and maybe some local word of mouth. So your initial marketing has to be inexpensive and what we call guerrilla marketing. That's the first thing. So really 2 components to marketing. Number 1, to make sure that your message, so to speak, and I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, is very simple. Why should someone buy your product or service? If you don't know why, someone else won't know why. And then to be able to communicate that and say, you should buy my product or service because, and then you go find those people. So marketing is an integral part of it. Sometimes it's as simple as just putting up a sign in front of your store. In today's day and age, it's a little bit more complicated, between social media and social media, again, is an overrated word. But basically, social media is just a less conventional way, less traditional way of just communicating to people that there's some value over here by word of mouth, etc. That's all. But that's basically 101 marketing.
Is there an official rule of thumb, like when someone's calculating their budget, they should plan to spend 20% of their budget on marketing? Is there like any rules?
No, because it depends on the margins on the product or the service. If you're working on a product or service that's a 10% margin, you're in a very low margin area. You have to watch every single fraction of a percentage point. You probably can't spend more than 0.5% or 1% on marketing. And so for every dollar you bring in as revenue, you may have to be able to only put 5 cents away, or 10 cents away, as a budget for marketing. When you start the business, you may have to look at marketing as not as a percentage of sales, but just like I have to fix up the store and do some, improvements and make fancy shelves and stock the stores. I may have to spend a disproportionate amount of advertising just to tell everybody I exist, but that would be sort of a one-time shot. Then after that, depending on your margin, you have to take a certain percentage of your sales and just put them into a marketing fund and say, for every dollar that I spend, a certain amount goes. If you're, let's say, in the high margin business, you're in a service business, let's say you're making 80% margin or 90% margin, because you're really in a service business, you may take 20% and put it towards marketing, whatever that marketing is, whether it's a local newsletter, it's social media, it's posters, it's whatever it is, just letting people know you exist. If you are in a much lower margin, such as a retail store, where you may be working, between 15 and 40 points, you may only put away 5% of your sales, but you have to be very disciplined about it and say, if I'm making 25%, I'm not really making 25%. 5% has to go for marketing or whatever that number is, depending on the rest of the cost structure of your business.
Very nice. Let me ask you like this. I mean, you through your company, you've managed to see many people working for you, and personality traits. What would you say are key personality traits for an entrepreneur? Things that people should work on to increase their chances of succeeding in their business.
Well, there's skill and talent, and the difference between skill and talent is something you just grown up with, it's innate, and skill is something that you actually learn. I would think that most entrepreneurs don't go to college, to school to become entrepreneurs. That's who they are. They are probably those who may have not succeeded so much in a traditional school environment. They're on Spilkes, have ants in their pants, they have ADD probably, but that's a certain skill set. That's a certain talent of being able to do multiple things at once, being a visionary, being a risk taker. Those are the things that are inherent in an entrepreneur. On the other hand, there are things that must be learned. An entrepreneur could have only, let's say, half of what it takes to be a successful businessman. Sometimes actually it could be a wrecking ball because of all those things. So someone has to have an appetite for risk, an appetite, and to be able to handle stress, being able to handle crisis. Crisis management is one of the key tools, and being your own business.
Dig into that a little bit. Explain what you mean by that.
When you work for somebody else versus you own your own business, and something happens, let's say something bad happens, nothing's really bad, everything is good, it's just, it seems bad. If you are in a, you're working for somebody and you're good at what you do in terms of, let's say you're a buyer, you're a salesman, or whatever you're doing, that's your skill set. You can do that very well. But when there's a crisis, the electricity goes out in the building, the computer system crashes, half the employees don't show up one day, whatever that crisis is, the biggest vendor goes out of business, the biggest customer goes out of business. Are you able to handle that? Or do you fall apart and it's beyond you, it goes over your head? So those are the kinds of things that a business owner has to be able to do, other than outside, or at least equally as important to the underlying skill set of running that business. So if you're a restaurateur, for example, of course, you have to know how to cook, you have to know how to service customers, and you have to know all the basics of running a business. But if your key supplier, shuts down one day, Are you able to think under stress? Are you able to dig yourself out of that and come up with alternative ways of managing that and making everything look like it's good? Or do you fall apart? Or even more, are you able to be proactive and think about those things in advance so that when they actually happen, you say, aha, that's why I spent money, or that's why I usually have two suppliers, even though I pay the second supplier a little bit more. But when I need them, they're here, and when the other one, wasn't available. Those are the kinds of things that are outside of the core skill set of just running the business, but they're equally important. And crises, big or small, happen in businesses every single day. And some people that's not within their core. They can't handle it. Some people can manage it, and some people thrive on it. And those are one of the key things in being able to, and what's necessary to run a business, not only in needing to run a business. A good example of a crisis in a business would be if suddenly everybody, all the warehouse workers unionized overnight. What does the business do? What did you do to prevent union? These are the kinds of things that throw a business into turmoil. And can you handle it? Can you not handle it? Even, for example, a lot of people who run Amazon businesses. An Amazon suspension, chas v'shalom, God forbid, and it happens all the time. What happens is the business owner capable of thinking about that possibility in advance? What happens if there is a suspension? Do I have a cushion, a reserve that I can still pay my employees even if they freeze my account, and then figure out a way out of it? Or am I living hand to mouth? So are you able to think proactively or not? Or under crisis, are you able to step back, figure out how to get out of it, how to manage it, or do you fall apart? And then after that, do you actually, when it's over, do you reflect back and say, how do I make sure this never happens again? Or if it does happen again, that the effects of it will be much less. How do I minimize or mitigate the effects on that?
So while we're discussing this, let me ask you a question like this from this angle. Someone's in a business, and Baruch Hashem, it's starting to find hatzlacha, and the business is growing. And so now it's a question of what role they should take. Like when you come up with an idea, you're the visionary and you're getting all into it. But as the business grows, there's all these new roles that come into play. HR and the marketing and everything starts to become more fragmented. And you have to. How does a person choose what's their role in a company as it's growing?
What are you best at? It's as simple as that. What are you really good at? And what are you not so good at that someone else can be better than you? And can you manage? You need a skill set of managing. Or if you're a poor manager, then you need to hire a manager. And the question is, can the business afford a manager or not? And until it affords a manager, how do you get there? So if your core skill set, for example, is creating a product or a service, but you're not so strong in actually being able to sell, you don't have that confidence, that stomach to go out there and actually knock on doors and persuade people and convince them that your product or service is what they need and will actually solve them. You're a little bit shy, a little bit reserved, but you're great at actually coming up with the best product and solution. You should be hiring a salesman. If, on the other hand, you're a walking, talking salesman, and you can sell anything to anybody, and that's your core skill set. Making a product is almost secondary. Get yourself a good product development guy. What if both those are your strong skill set, but you're not so organized? You don't have the headspace to organize that little warehouse and make sure that everything is organized and inventory is exact, or managing your cash flows. Hire someone to do that. So do what you're good at best, and hire where you're weak. At some point, obviously, you're going to have to hire people for even what you're good at, because there's only so much time that you have. And so if you want to conquer the world and sell your product or service to everybody in the world, most likely you won't be able to do that yourself, but you're going to start with yourself. And then you're going to hire other people who hopefully will be as good as you, or you'll be their mentor, and you'll be able to teach them to be as good as you and as passionate as you and as skilled as you in doing that.
Okay, final two questions for you. Time, work-life, ruchnius balance. If someone becomes an entrepreneur and they're all into their business and it's taking up their whole life, what have you found? What wisdom would you tell people? How do they maintain that balance, in order to, be a competent person? You got to have time for family. You got to have time dedicated to ruchnius. How does an entrepreneur manage all of that?
It's another skill set that is very, very, very difficult, because usually people who are passionate about things tend to go overboard about them in terms of time and energy. And usually that's what's driving their success, at least initially. If they're totally committed and almost obsessed with what they're doing, they're passionate about what they're doing, and it takes over, their whole being. But why is a person working very hard? Because he or she wants to have time for their family. They're working very hard so they can bring money home to the family. They're working very hard because they want to have time for ruchnius, for spirituality. But if all you're doing is that, and just being, obsessed with your business and everything else goes by the wayside, you're really not living life. It's a very, very, very hard balance, and a person has to be sort of disciplined, very disciplined, and it'll change over time. So let's say a young person who is just starting their business, but their family is young and they've been married already more than a year, so they've done their Shana Rishon and all of that, may put a little bit more time and resources into it, maybe even include their spouse in it. So that will be, the way of managing their family. But you have to have that balance, and you have to be able to departmentalize. Whatever you do, you have to be fully, fully focused at that time at what you're doing. And so if you're in shul, be in shul. If you're learning, learn. If you're at home, be at home. If you're with your kids, be with your kids. 15 minutes with your kids that's uninterrupted and fully focused can be even more valuable than 2 hours, while you're sitting on the couch on your cell phone. And so it's not only about how much time, it's about focus. And you could really give it all the right amount of time if you give it the right amount of focus. If you recall, then the Rebbe used to give out dollars. Thousands of people used to come through on a Sunday. I think up to sometimes 6,000 people on an average Sunday. Every person, whether it was 3 seconds, 5 seconds, or 2 minutes, was given full focus and full attention, that there was nobody else right then and there except the Rebbe and that person. Total focus, however short that moment was. That's, it's Moich Shalat Alev. Do it 100%. You'll have time for everything. There's a famous saying, if you want something done, find a busy person to give it to.
Right, and you sort of preempted me, but my final question to you would be, is there any Torah personality, biblical personality, or a teaching of the Torah that's been an inspiration to you in business? Is there...
Now you're asking personal questions again.
It's the final question.
Well, if you look at the Rambam, for example, the Rambam was a doctor, or yet he had plenty of time to write. To write his publications that obviously required a lot of time, energy, and focus. And I can imagine that he put the same amount of time and focus into medicine or whatever else he was busy with equal amount of focus. So that would be something that if you want to aspire to sort of the correct balance. But you also see that there are Tanaim in the Gemara that were business people or craftsmen. How did they balance that? And the answer is they did. And they did it fully. Whatever they were doing fully. And so, today, it's harder to see those personalities sort of standing out. But chances are they're right there next to you in shul. You just don't realize that person is that.
Very nice, very nice. This has been a wonderful conversation. I want to just say for those of you listening, Mitzvah Shem, in just under 3 weeks, on February 6th, we're having our big e-commerce event. Mitzvah Shem Chaim is going to be participating. He's going to be giving a class on operations and how to avoid common operational pitfalls. And the Mitzvah Shem is going to participate also in the roundtables. And so it'll be your chance to actually meet him in person. Looking forward. Everyone have a wonderful week filled with tremendous atzlacha, Michael, Achayel. See you again next episode. Thank you for listening to the CHYE in partnership with COL Live K-Factor podcast with your host, Rabbi Yehoshua Wordy. We look forward to bringing you more amazing entrepreneurs to share their stories. See you next week.